I remember the exact moment I stopped feeling anything, not the moment I broke down, not the moment I cried, not even the moment I admitted I needed help. No, I'm talking about something quieter, more terrifying. The moment I sat at the top of everything I had ever built, the apartment, the career, the reputation, the calendar full of meetings that proved I mattered, and felt absolutely, completely, devastatingly nothing, not sadness. Sadness would have been a gift, just nothing, like standing inside a mansion you spent a decade constructing, running your hands along marble countertops and hardwood floors and perfectly hung art, and realizing slowly that you have no idea who lives here, that you designed every room for someone else to admire, that not a single corner of it was built for you to rest in. That was the moment. And I want to talk to you about it, not from the other side of some polished transformation, not from the summit of a healing journey wrapped in a bow, but from the ground, from the rubble, from the particular kind of silence that only arrives when you've run so fast for so long that your legs finally give out and the world doesn't stop turning, and you realize, almost with a kind of dark humor, that the world never needed you to be running that hard in the first place. Wait, before you scroll, I know you've seen this kind of video before. I know you've heard men talk about waking up and changing and becoming. I know the algorithm has served you 100 versions of this story. But I'm not here to give you a formula. I'm not here to sell you discipline. I'm not here to tell you that cold showers and journaling and waking up at 5 in the morning will hollow out the ache that lives somewhere behind your sternum. I'm here because I found something that scared me more than failure ever did. I'm here because someone stayed, and I almost destroyed it. I built a life around being needed. I built it carefully, obsessively, like a man who mistakes construction for meaning. I built morning routines and financial systems and social media presences and carefully maintained silences around everything that hurt. I built walls that looked like wisdom. I built distance that looked like strength. I built a version of myself that could walk into any room and be the most composed person there, the one other people leaned on, the one who always had an answer, who never flinched, who laughed at the right moments and spoke with the right authority and never, ever let you see the gears grinding underneath. I thought that was success. I thought that was what a man was supposed to do. I built it on the only blueprint I had, the one written for me before I was old enough to question it. You learn early, very early, how love works in your house. You learn whether love is something you receive simply for existing, or whether it's something you earn through performance, through achievement, through making yourself useful, impressive, undeniable. You learn whether it's safe to be small, to be uncertain, to say I don't know, or I'm scared, or I need something right now. You learn these things not from lectures but from silences, from the quality of attention you received when you succeeded versus the strange atmospheric pressure of the room when you failed. I learned that love was conditional, not because anyone was cruel, not because anyone sat me down and said, here are the conditions, but because that's the thing about conditional love. It never announces itself. It just shapes you. Quietly, persistently, until you are a man who cannot sit still, a man who equates rest with laziness, a man who would rather work through pain than admit he is in it, a man who looks at his own reflection and sees first a performance review. Tell me something. When was the last time you did something with no audience? Not for the post, not for the story, not for the version of yourself you're building in someone else's imagination. When was the last time you sat in a room alone and felt like you were enough, exactly as you were, with nothing to show for it? I'll wait. I thought the answer was more achievement, more money, more proof. If I could just get to the next level, then I would feel it, that settled, quiet confidence I saw in other men and assumed was the result of what they had accomplished. So I worked. God, I worked. I optimized everything. I read the books and implemented the systems and tracked the metrics and surrounded myself with people who spoke the language of ambition like it was a second religion. I thought I was building something. I was building a prison with very good lighting. And the cruelest part, nobody could see the bars. Not my colleagues, not my friends, not even the women I dated who mistook my control for stability and my emotional distance for mystery. I was performing a version of myself so polished, so consistent, so relentlessly together that I had no idea how to be anything else. The performance had become the identity. The mask had fused to the face. And somewhere underneath all of it, the real man, the one who was tired, the one who was lonely, the one who wanted to be held without having to earn it first, was suffocating in silence. Here's what I learned about performance. It attracts applause, but it repels intimacy, because intimacy requires the opposite of performance. It requires the willingness to be seen failing, to be seen uncertain, to walk into a room with your hands empty and say, I don't have it figured out and I need you anyway. And that particular act of surrender was the one thing I had spent my entire life training myself not to do. Her name doesn't matter. What matters is what she did, or rather, what she refused to do. She refused to be impressed, not in an unkind way, not in a way that diminished me, but in a way that somehow over time dismantled me. Because I had built my entire relational strategy around being impressive. I knew how to show up with charm and ambition and just enough vulnerability to seem deep without actually being exposed. I knew how to be interesting. I knew how to hold space in a way that made a woman feel seen while I, paradoxically, remained invisible. She didn't take the bait. She would sit across from me at dinner and let the silence breathe instead of rushing to fill it. She would ask questions that had no impressive answer. Not, what are you building or what are you working on, but what are you afraid of right now? Not, where do you see yourself in 5 years? But when did you last feel genuinely at peace? She was doing something I had never encountered before. She was looking for the man underneath the monument, and I didn't know if that man existed anymore. I thought she was naive. I thought she was idealistic. I thought she didn't understand how the world worked, that you couldn't just walk around being real, being open, being unguarded. I told myself she was too soft for the version of life I was living. I constructed elaborate internal justifications for why her kind of presence was a liability, not an asset. Don't deny it. You know this move. You've done it too. That precise psychological maneuver where you take something that's actually healing you and convince yourself it's a threat. Because healing is terrifying when you've built your entire identity around the wound. Because softness exposes everything the hardness was designed to hide, she stayed. I want you to understand what that means in the context of everything I was. I was not easy to stay with. I canceled plans because work demanded it and never apologized with real weight behind the words. I deflected every emotional conversation into an intellectual one. Because feelings were messy and intellect was something I could win at. I gave her the best version of my presence only when I had something left over, which was rarely because I had committed everything I had to people and projects that would never love me back. She stayed, not because she had no other options, not because she needed me, not because she was hoping I would change and become a project she could complete. She stayed, I eventually understood, because she could see something I had lost access to. A self underneath the system, a man underneath the machine, and she was willing to wait for him, not indefinitely, not without honesty, not passively, but with a kind of patient presence that says, I see you, the real you, and I'm not going anywhere. That is the most dangerous thing anyone has ever done to me. Let me tell you what real danger feels like. Real danger is not a threat. Real danger is not confrontation. Real danger is not someone challenging you in public or undermining you at work or questioning your strategy. Real danger, the kind that makes your hands shake and your chest tighten and something deep in your nervous system fire distress signals. Real danger is someone loving you the right way when you've only ever been loved the wrong way, because the wrong kind of love, the conditional kind, the earned kind, the performing for an audience kind, at least it's familiar. You know the rules, you know how to play, you know how to win, and you know the cost when you lose. There is a perverse comfort in the prison you grew up in, even when it's killing you. But real love, present, patient, honest love, dismantles the prison, and that means the walls come down, all of them, and suddenly there you are, standing in the open air without the armor, without the system, without the performance, and every nerve ending in your body is screaming that this is wrong, this is unsafe, you are exposed and vulnerable and something terrible is about to happen, and nothing terrible happens. She just looks at you, and in her eyes, you see something you have been running from your entire life, the possibility that you are worth knowing, not for what you do, not for what you build, not for what you earn or achieve or create or become, but for the simple, radical, insufficient, and entirely sufficient fact of who you are. That is when I collapsed, not dramatically, not in the way movies show breakdown, the crumpling, the sobbing, the cathartic release. I collapsed quietly on a Tuesday evening, sitting in my car in a parking garage after a meeting in which I had been brilliant and decisive and completely empty. I sat there and I felt the weight of every year I had spent performing instead of living. Every relationship I had kept at arm's length because proximity felt like danger. Every moment of genuine feeling I had metabolized into productivity. Every time a human being had reached for the real me and I had handed them the polished version instead. I sat in that parking garage and I understood something. The empire I had built was not a home. I had constructed an altar to achievement and I had been worshiping at it my whole life, and the God on that altar had never once made me feel held, loved, known, seen, or safe. It had only ever demanded more. Another milestone. Another level. Another proof of worth. And I had given everything to it, willingly, eagerly, desperately, because at least the demanding was familiar. At least the never enough matched the story I had been told about myself since childhood. Here's what I learned in that parking garage. The collapse was not a failure. The collapse was mercy. I drove to her. I didn't call ahead. I didn't prepare anything to say. I didn't draft the conversation in my head or strategize about how to present my vulnerability in the most favorable light. I just drove and I knocked. And when she opened the door, I stood there with nothing. No charm, no performance, no carefully assembled version of myself. And I said the only true thing I had said out loud in years. I don't know who I am when I stop performing. She opened the door wider. That's all. She didn't give a speech. She didn't offer a solution. She didn't rush to reassure me or fix the discomfort or navigate around the rawness of what I had said. She just opened the door wider and let me in. And in that gesture, so small, so quiet, so utterly without drama, something inside me that had been clenched for 30-something years began, very slowly, to unclench. Look at me for a second. I need you to understand something. I'm not telling you this story so you'll find a woman and let her save you. I'm not telling you to outsource your healing to someone else's love. That is not the lesson. That is, in fact, the opposite of the lesson. What she gave me was not salvation. What she gave me was a mirror, steady, non-distorting, mercilessly honest. And in that mirror I saw, for the first time in a long time, a man who had confused his armor with his identity. The work was mine to do. She just refused to let me avoid it. Here's what rebuilding actually looks like. It doesn't look like transformation. Not at first. It looks like sitting with the discomfort of not optimizing something. It looks like having a conversation and resisting the urge to control how you're perceived in it. It looks like admitting to a friend, just one to start, that you are struggling. It looks like the particular and bewildering experience of asking for help and not dying from it. I built new things. I built a morning that was not a productivity protocol, but a ritual of presence. 10 minutes of sitting with coffee and actually tasting it, actually feeling the warmth of the cup, actually being inside my own body instead of 3 meetings ahead in my mind. 10 minutes. That was the entire renovation. At first, I built the capacity to be wrong out loud. I built a vocabulary for my inner life that extended beyond fine and tired and good. I started really noticing, when I was anxious versus when I was excited, when I was lonely versus when I needed solitude, when I was avoiding a feeling versus when I had genuinely processed it. These are not large things, they are very small things. But small, consistent acts of self-honesty are how you excavate yourself from underneath years of performance. I thought the bricks I was laying were the career, the income, the recognition. I was wrong. The bricks are honesty, presence, patience, the willingness to be known, the practice of asking for help, the courage to say I was wrong, or I'm scared, or I need you, or I don't know. These are the bricks that build a home. The other things, the career, the money, the achievements, they are fine. They have their place, but they are furniture. They are decoration. You cannot live inside them. You cannot be held by them. You cannot call them at 2 in the morning when the darkness gets specific and personal, and they cannot tell you that everything is going to be all right, and they cannot sit beside you in the silence and simply be present. I had built an empire. I needed a home. Here's what I learned about the fear of being known. It is the most universal fear I've ever encountered in men, and it is the one we are least allowed to name. We talk about fear of failure, fear of rejection, even fear of success. But we do not often talk about the particular intimate terror of being truly seen, of having someone understand not just your achievements and your personality and your attractive qualities, but also your confusion, your shame, your smallness, your irrational needs, your midnight doubts, the parts of yourself you have carefully curated out of every relationship you've ever had. We are afraid to be known because we are afraid that if someone sees everything, they will leave. And we learned that fear honestly. We learned it from the first people who had the power to leave. We learned it from the moments in childhood or adolescence or early adulthood when we showed something real and the response was dismissal or ridicule or the particular cruelty of indifference. And we concluded, silently, conclusively, in the way children make unshakable decisions about the world, that showing yourself is dangerous. So we constructed alternatives. We constructed admirable selves, impressive selves, useful selves. We made ourselves necessary in relationships so that usefulness would substitute for intimacy. We made ourselves entertaining so that enjoyment would substitute for being known. We made ourselves strong so that strength would justify the distance. And it worked, professionally, socially, even romantically. It worked. For a while, but there is a cost. The cost is the hollow feeling in the chest. The cost is waking up next to someone and feeling profoundly alone. The cost is reaching the summit of everything you said you wanted and feeling the particular vertigo of having climbed the wrong mountain. I paid that cost for years. I'm telling you, the interest rate is brutal. Wait. Before you scroll, I want to say something about the men around you, the ones who seem like they have it together, the ones who are achieving and moving and building without apparent strain. I want to say look closer, not with judgment, with recognition. Because I promise you that most of them are doing exactly what I was doing. They are running from something. They are building something to prove something to someone who may not even be watching anymore. They are performing a version of strength that they have confused for the real thing. This is not an indictment. This is a mirror. I know because I was them. I know because in certain moments I still am them. The work is not completed. It is ongoing. There are mornings when I wake up and the old programming boots up immediately, whispering its usual metrics. How productive are you today? How impressive are you today? What are you building? What have you done? What have you earned? Are you enough yet? And I have to choose, again, every morning. Not dramatically, not with a speech, just quietly in the 5 minutes before the day begins. I have to choose to be a man who is present rather than a man who is performing. A man who is building a home rather than an empire. A man who is known rather than admired. Some mornings it's easy. Some mornings it is the hardest thing I do. She once asked me something I have never stopped thinking about. We were sitting outside. It was late, one of those nights where the air has a particular quality of stillness, where something about the darkness makes honesty feel safer. And she turned to me and asked very simply, when you imagine someone truly loving you, what does that look like? Not what you think it should look like. What does it actually look like to you, in your body, in your day? What does it feel like to be loved? I opened my mouth and nothing came out, not because I was being evasive, not because I was deflecting, but because I genuinely had no answer. I had spent so much of my life pursuing love, or what I believed was love, which was actually approval, which was actually performance, which was actually control, that I had never stopped to ask myself what I actually needed from another human being, what I was actually hungry for. What the real shape of connection looked like for me, underneath all the conditioning and compensation and carefully maintained walls. That silence lasted a long time, and in it, for the first time and as long as I could remember, I felt the contours of something real, something that was not a goal or a project or a system, something that could not be optimized, something that could only be received. Here's what I learned about presence. We talk about productivity constantly. We have built entire industries around it. We measure our days and output. We have apps that track our focus and journals that quantify our gratitude and podcasts that optimize our mindset and coaches who help us squeeze more efficiency from every available hour. And I am not saying those things have no value. I am saying they taught me nothing about how to actually be in a room with another person. Presence is not a productivity metric. Presence is not an achievement. Presence is the radical countercultural act of being fully inside a moment without planning the next one. It is listening to someone speak and hearing what they are actually saying rather than preparing your response. It is sitting with a person you love and giving them the gift of your undivided, unoptimized, unprofitable attention. It sounds simple. It is, in my experience, one of the most difficult things a high-achieving, future-oriented, identity-wrapped in performance man can do. I used to sit across from her at dinner and be 3 conversations ahead. I would be calculating how the evening was going, whether I was being impressive enough, interesting enough, emotionally available in the right proportion. I was so busy managing the relationship that I was not actually in it. The moment I understood that, the moment I caught myself managing instead of being, something shifted. I put down the management, I picked up the dinner, the actual dinner, the food, the candle, the sound of her voice, the particular way she laughed at something small, the way she cradled her wine glass when she was thinking. I let myself simply be there. It was extraordinary, not in a cinematic way, in a quiet, private, domestic way that no one would have made a movie about, but it was the richest 5 minutes I had spent in years. I want to talk about asking for help, because this, I think, is where the prison is most solid. This is where the walls are thickest, the guards most vigilant, the internal punishment for transgression most swift and merciless. We have been taught, through culture, through observation, through the accumulated messaging of 1,000 subtle sources, that asking for help is a declaration of inadequacy, that a man who cannot solve his own problems is not a man in the complete sense, that vulnerability is a liability in a world that rewards competence and punishes weakness. That showing need is the first step toward being abandoned. This is one of the most damaging lies that has ever been told to men, and we tell it to each other constantly, quietly, without meaning to. I did not ask for help for years. Not real help. Not the kind that requires you to say, I am struggling with something inside myself, and I do not know how to fix it alone. I asked for the kind of help that kept me in the expert position. Advice about strategy, input on decisions, collaboration on projects. The kind of help that still put me in the driver's seat. The first time I asked for real help, not from her, from a man, a friend I had known for a decade and never actually known at all, my voice shook. I told him I was not okay, that I had not been okay for a while, that I was tired in a way that sleep did not fix, that I was successful and empty, and that I was afraid the emptiness was permanent. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Me too." Those 2 words cracked something open that I have never been able to fully close, and I am grateful every day that it cannot close. Here's what I want you to know about the connection that feels like love but is actually dangerous. It is not a person. It is not even a relationship. It is the connection you have developed to your own performance, to the version of yourself that produces and achieves and impresses and provides. It is the deep, devoted, sacrificial bond you have formed with the person you became so that other people would not leave, not the person you actually are. The connection feels like love because it is familiar, Because it has been with you so long, because it has, in its way, kept you safe, or at least kept you from experiencing certain kinds of pain. Because when you do things right, when you hit the metrics, when you perform the identity, there is a feeling that resembles being loved, a warmth, a validation, an approval, but it is not love. It is the echo of love, the shape of love without the substance. And the danger, the real danger I want to name, is that this connection will cost you the actual thing. It will cost you the relationship with the real woman sitting across from you at dinner. It will cost you the friendship with the man who would say, "Me too," if you gave him the chance. It will cost you the relationship with your children, who do not need your achievement. They need your presence. It will cost you, ultimately, the relationship with yourself, the quiet, unperforming, unoptimized self that has been waiting your entire adult life for you to simply stop and acknowledge that he is there. Don't deny it. You know this is true. Some part of you, reading this right now, recognizes what I'm describing. Some part of you has felt it, in the silence after a win that felt hollow, in the loneliness that exists inside a room full of people who admire you, in the distance between who you are on your best performance days and who you are at 3 a.m. when no one is watching and you are just a man alone with the specific weight of your own life. That part of you is not broken. That part of you is the invitation. I am still building, but I know now what I am building for. I know the difference between bricks laid for an audience and bricks laid for a life. I know the difference between a foundation built on approval and a foundation built on truth. The first shatters when the applause stops. The second holds even when everything is dark. She is still here. Not because I fixed myself, not because I became the man she deserved through some dramatic act of transformation, but because I stopped pretending, I stopped optimizing, I stopped managing, I started showing up, imperfect, sometimes stumbling, sometimes reverting, sometimes needing to be reminded of everything I had learned. And she met me there. Not with solutions, not with applause, but with the kind of steady, honest, unheroic love that does not require you to be anything other than what you actually are. That is the most profound thing I have ever experienced, and it almost never happened. I almost ran from it. I almost built enough distance to make it impossible. I almost succeeded at protecting myself from the only thing that ever actually reached me. Tell me something. What would you let yourself feel if the performance stopped for one day? Just one day. No metrics, no achievements, no proving, no managing. What would rise to the surface if you let the productivity machinery go quiet? I suspect you already know. I suspect you have glimpsed it in unguarded moments. Early mornings before the phone has claimed you, late nights when the work is finished and the distractions have run dry and there is just you and the silence and the particular quality of a life you are not entirely sure you chose. I suspect the real man in you is not a stranger. He is simply the man you have been too busy, too armored, too afraid to introduce to the world. He is worth introducing, not because he is impressive, because he is real. And real is, I promise you, more magnetic, more connecting, more genuinely valuable than any performance you could ever construct. The performance attracts people to the stage. The reality makes them stay. The collapse, I understand now, was not the end. It was the beginning of the only life I have ever actually lived. The emptiness that I sat with in that apartment, surrounded by every external proof of success, was not a diagnosis of worthlessness. It was an invitation, an honest signal from some deep, incorruptible part of myself that the life I was living was not the life I had come here to live. That the man I was presenting to the world was a brilliant, loving construction, but not a life. The foundation was not destroyed in the collapse, the false one was. The real foundation, honesty, presence, the willingness to be known, the capacity to love and be loved without condition, that was always there. Waiting underneath the noise, waiting underneath the productivity and the identity and the relentless forward motion, waiting with the patience of something that knows it does not need to compete, because it is the only thing that is real. I found it in a parking garage on a Tuesday. I found it in the openness of a door. I find it every morning in the 10 minutes before the day begins when I sit with my coffee and I am no one and I am enough. Look at me for a second. You are not the empire you are building. You are not the performance you have perfected. You are not the reputation or the revenue or the resume. You are not the carefully maintained distance or the practiced ease or the particular way you have learned to hold yourself together in public. You are the man underneath all of it. And he is exhausted and he is worthy. And he has been waiting, not impatiently, not bitterly, with a grace that would break your heart if you turned toward it. For you to stop building long enough to come home, not to her, not to anyone else, to yourself. That is where it starts. That is the only place it can start. Not in the relationship you are hoping will finally make you feel okay. Not in the achievement you are chasing that will finally make you feel enough. Not in the moment, somewhere in the future, when you have finally fixed the thing about yourself that you have decided is disqualifying. It starts now, in the next honest word, in the next moment of actual presence. And the next time someone reaches for you and you do not manage the reaching, you simply receive it, small bricks, every day, toward the home, not the empire. Here's what I learned. The connection that feels like love but is actually dangerous, the one to the performance, to the armor, to the relentless machine of self-construction. The connection has an expiration date. It cannot sustain you forever. It was never designed to. It was designed for survival, not for living, for getting through, not for being present in, for enduring, not for thriving. And the fact that you have felt its inadequacy, the fact that some part of you recognized the emptiness at the top of the mountain, the hollow in the chest after the win, the loneliness inside the admiration, that is not weakness. That is your wholeness refusing to be silenced. That is the real you, knocking from the inside. Let him out, not all at once, not dramatically, just a little each day, one honest conversation, one moment of genuine presence, one time you ask for help, one time you say, I don't have it figured out to someone who matters. One morning you sit with yourself without immediately reaching for the productivity tools. One evening you look at the person across from you and actually see them and let them actually see you and stay in that exposure long enough to discover that you are not destroyed by it. You are, in fact, found. She taught me that, not by lecturing me, not by challenging me, not by issuing ultimatums or presenting me with evidence of my own patterns. She taught me by simply refusing to love the performance, by looking gently and consistently past the monument I had built toward the man it was built to hide, by creating in her presence a space where it was safe to not know, safe to be wrong, safe to be small, safe to need. I almost couldn't receive it. I almost threw it away. I almost succeeded, in my dedicated and efficient way, at building enough distance to make real love impossible. Don't do what I almost did. The connection you feel to the performance is powerful. It is familiar and rewarding in its predictable way, and it will never stop asking for more. It will always have one more level, one more achievement, one more proof that you are enough. It will consume everything you give it and leave you exactly where I was, surrounded by the evidence of everything you built and unable to feel a single brick. Choose the other thing. Choose the terrifying, imperfect, unheroic, magnificent daily work of being actually known. Choose presence over performance, authenticity over achievement, connection over construction. Choose the home over the empire, every single day, in small ways, in quiet choices that no one will applaud, that will not go on the resume, that will not impress anyone at the party. They will, however, be your life, the actual one, the real one, the one you were always meant to be living. And the next time someone stays, really stays, past the performance, through the silence, into the real, let them in. The door is the bravest thing you will ever open.